Hello and welcome back, YouTubers. This is Dory. Oh my. Please go ahead and hit those headlines, media outlets. Please, please, please slam gamers for being violent. Firstly, I want to say the story and then I will say my take on it. The convicted murderer says video games made killings easier. That's the headline. Good job, GameSpot, man. You really nailed it. Even though you're supposed to be an industry for gaming, you're doing just as much damage as every other media outlet. But how can I blame you? This is literally what he said, right? Well, let's take a look at the story. An Idaho man, 22-year-old Adam Dees, is convicted for murdering 3 people and told authorities this week his addiction to first-person violent shooter video games made his crimes easier to commit. Now, I want you to notice that in the headline, and probably in every headline, no one will say addiction. Please, fix your headlines, media outlets. You guys are being extremely disingenuous and painting a bad picture. Convicted murderer says his addiction to violent video games made killings easier. Now, that doesn't exactly excuse or prevent people from being influenced by violent video games, but I'm going to talk about it anyways. I don't really have a lot of facts or statistics to bring up, but there are a lot of studies out there for and against violent video games, so I feel that it's somewhere neutrally. But later in this article, people will say what I need to say and say it very well. So let's address the rest of the article. So, the sheriffs talked to him when asked specifically about the murders. D said that it wasn't difficult for him to do because he had done so much killing in video games. That literally was his quote. So, that's okay, not a problem. He ended up murdering an 80-year-old, 77-year-old, and a 52-year-old. He looked up the house, found out that it was in a ritzy part of the neighborhood, went and robbed these people, and then killed them. He beat them to death and then shot them in the head. Now, none of these murders are okay. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that his mentality is somewhat normal for how he feels addicted to video games. I'm not saying that this guy is mentally competent. He is not, obviously. He ended up being a manic depressant. He's dealt with depression. He's had issues with bipolar disorder, and he's on medication. So to say the least, his mental capacity is not correct in this. But the human brain does like to numb things, depending on what the things are. So in the military, I was trained on how to kill people. You guys probably understand this and know this, but I was trained to view the targets as targets and not people. This changed my outlook and made me detach myself from the people that I had to kill in Afghanistan. So if you guys understand that mentality, you can kind of understand how his addiction to violent video games numbed him as well. Now, being a person of sound and good mind, this might not affect them. And as the article does proceed on, it says, quote, if you are relatively healthy and a social stable child, you may be doing just fine being exposed to video games, she said. If you already have some difficulties emotionally or socially, you really need some limits. Okay, this individual says that, okay? Now, doesn't that say something about this individual? He was, 1, addicted to a platform that allowed him to express great interest in murder. 2, he was extremely depressed and he was bipolar in not taking his meds. And 3, he probably was living on his own and had easy access to these outlets and things of that nature, but he chose not to get help. He chose not to take his medications, and instead he chose to rob someone and kill them all by shooting them in the head. Now, it is not depicted or told what kind of games he did use or play. He just said he was addicted to violent video games. His addiction to violent first-person shooters. So no, this may not have even involved Grand Theft Auto. I don't know which version he played, but Grand Theft Auto technically is not a first-person shooter, even though it has quote-unquote first-person mode. So he very well could have just played Destiny. He could have played, Call of Duty. Hell, he could have even played Minecraft, even though that's not classified as first-person. You understand what I'm saying, though. So, there are a few things that we do need to look at. I'm going to say it again. The final statement here. If you are relatively healthy and socially stable, you may do just fine being exposed to video games. Now, that statement in itself is kind of disingenuous also because they say video games, not violent video games. Video games is a media outlet just like anything else. There was an attempted killing of a president because of a book before. There have been killings over music. Rappers have beefed with each other and tried to kill each other before, and people have tried to kill each other over songs and things of that nature. Media influences people in ways that we don't understand, but ultimately, the person who is behind the gun has to pull the trigger. No one commands anyone to go and kill people via media outlets. 99.9% of the time, that is not the case, because there's laws against that. You can't tell people to go kill other people and expect to be scot-free. So him being addicted to video games is perfectly fine. That's acceptable. That is even acceptable behavior for our society, because we have things like Las Vegas. We have things like gambling in every gas station. We have pull punch cards, things of that nature. Get that fix. We have alcohol. We have smoking. And if these things weren't socially acceptable, then they would be removed from our society, but they are socially acceptable. So being addicted to video games is no different than being addicted to pornography. It is just a different type of addiction. And this individual happened to have a not good mental state, so he used weapons and things of that nature to live out whatever fantasy he had going. He's in jail, he's in custody now. And yeah, it's not a good time for him. He's learning the error of his ways, but maybe he is a socially accepted psychopath now, and he might be able to reduce his sentence by pleading the fact that he was addicted to video games and video games were dulling his sense of reality. If that being the case, I wouldn't send him to prison. I know that sounds silly, but I would rather see him living the rest of his life in a mental institution, because where in prison you can get out based on good behavior, in a mental institution you cannot unless you are mentally found fit and sound. So I would way rather have him living with other psychopaths than prisoners, because this guy, even though he is a killer and psychotic in the head, he is more psychotic than a killer. So it really is unfortunate that this guy killed these people, and my heart goes out to their family. I'm very, very sorry for the Welp family. I really am. It's horrible that this shit happens. It should not happen. But in the world we live in, when we have complete freedoms in certain countries, things like this may happen. Does it affect the mass? Should we ban guns? Should we ban video games? Should we ban violence? I mean, my lord, anytime some crazy shit happens, it seems like Walmart and major retailers stop selling those things. Even from Confederate flags to guns. Jesus Christ, but you can still get an ISIS cake, you better believe it, which is just outstandingly ridiculous and ignorant. Violent video games don't cause shootings. People picking up guns and pulling the trigger cause shootings. Violent video games do not cause aggression, agitation, or anger. Not being able to deal with what you're seeing, what you're doing, the violence, and intaking the media causes violence, aggression, and bad behavior. You know, just as easily as being cut off in traffic can agitate you, being killed in a video game can agitate you. And it's your job as an individual to either stay off the microphone and not harass people and get pissed off and go nuts and harass your own family. That's how you need to figure out how to deal with these issues. Either stay off the mic, don't play the games, or learn how to deal with your aggressions. It's okay to be mad sometimes. It's okay to be upset. You're not going to be happy when you're losing a Halo game. You're not going to be happy when you're losing at Destiny. And you're certainly not going to be happy when you're getting murdered over and over again in GTA 5. But the point is, if you can learn how to deal with this stuff competently and happily, then you won't have issues like this guy. But if you are in a mental state where you're supposed to be taking your meds and you're supposed to be able to competently be a person in society, you don't have a crippling disability, you just have to take medicine, then you yourself need to take control of your life and do that kind of stuff. So I'm very sorry, and a heartfelt apology to anyone outside of the gaming community who doesn't understand this. I'm sorry that people like this exist, and I know it's not my fault. I know it's not your fault. I know it's no one's fault except for these individuals. Because this guy was 22, he was a full well an adult. He knew what he was doing. So ladies and gentlemen, leave your comments down in the section below. And I've been your host, Protomario, and I'm signing out. Good gaming, and as always, God bless. And now, the important decision of joining the Maverick Rebellion. We are a tight group of individuals who rebel against stereotypes and greater evils that are commonly accepted. ISPs, children being conned out of games, sexism in video games, enough is enough, and the Mavericks have had it. If you choose to subscribe, or stay subscribed, you are joining the fight against injustice by watching my numerous video topics, from net neutrality to publishers covering up botched releases. The Mavericks are always informed on the issues plaguing your gaming experience today. So don't be left out in the cold, and don't let those people keep you down. Join the Maverick Rebellion today and become a member of the community that will listen and engage with you. What are you waiting for? Just click subscribe and you'll be in good company. Mavericks unite!